right, YouTube, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. What a relief. Auburn is actually playing their first game in a couple of weeks. Had a bye week that was scheduled, and then had a forced bye week because of the COVID-19. Mississippi State did not have enough scholarship players to participate in that game. Therefore, Auburn has 2 weeks to prepare for Tennessee. You know, a lot of great things happening in the SEC. You talk about the emergence of Florida, who is really starting to come across as somewhat of a contender in the SEC East, maybe to challenge Alabama to a certain degree. Not sure yet. I don't know how that athletic defense from Alabama will challenge Kyle Trask, assuming Florida wins out and is able to make it to the SEC championship game. And also considering the fact that Alabama has not quite won it yet. But let's just say, you know, LSU has a couple of games that have been postponed. So the only other team other than Auburn at this point that could pose a challenge to Alabama would be LSU. And we just don't know how that would turn out. I think Alabama will probably represent the SEC West in the SEC championship game. It is what it is. Now, as we focus our attention this week to Auburn versus Tennessee, this is a very unique rivalry that was kind of, you know, stalemated or kind of put on hold because of the expansions in the SEC, even dating back to 1992. That's when the game started to become less frequent. Auburn and Tennessee actually used to be a staple in the SEC, but now, because of the addition of Missouri and Texas A&M, these teams don't see each other but every 4 years. And that's actually a real disadvantage, I think, for the SEC. That's the only thing that makes the expansion a disadvantage, is Auburn had a lot of rivalries in the SEC East. And proximity-wise, it could make sense that Auburn be in the SEC East, but I like Auburn in the SEC West because the rivalries are a lot more competitive and it's much more physical football, you know, for the most part. So when we look at the Tennessee Volunteers, you talk about the first 2 games of the season, which extended a nice little winning streak that Tennessee had. Playing against South Carolina, winning that game, they were plus 2 on the turnover margin. The only thing is, which actually came back to haunt them later on, is the excessive first downs on South Carolina's part. Then you talk about Tennessee versus Missouri. This game actually capped off an 8 straight win streak for Tennessee dating back to 2019. Tennessee got off to an extra rocky start. I think they started out 2-5. And then went on a pretty nice little winning streak to end the season last year, 8-5 with a 23-22 win over Indiana. And then that thing kind of spilled over with 2 wins in the SEC, obviously, to begin the season, because this is an all SEC season. All indications said that, hey, Tennessee was on the right track. During the streak, after starting out 2-5, Tennessee averaged 31 points per game, but the only catch is they were 2-5 prior to that, playing against top 10 teams. The kicker to this is that Tennessee has a very hard time scoring points against either top 25 teams, top 10 teams, or teams that are probably good enough to be in the top 25. During the streak from last year, just to note, for a lot of the Tennessee fans out there who kind of got a little too drunk, a little too high off that streak, Tennessee did not play a single ranked team during that particular streak, which ended against Georgia 44-21. As reality would have it, Tennessee is currently on a 4-game losing streak. And it probably would have been 5 if they would have had to face Texas A&M. That was postponed because of the coronavirus. During that time, in 2020, after the honeymoon period with Missouri and South Carolina, Tennessee has only averaged 4.5 points per game. And that has been the talking point of Tennessee football at this point. They can't score points, especially against teams that are a little bit more talented than them, or a team that is higher ranked than them. They can't get it done on the football field. Another thing that they can't do when it comes to ranked teams, when it comes to teams of equal or maybe even a little bit more superior talent, they absolutely cannot win the turnover margin. Now, let's look at these stats, and it will give a clear indication as to why Tennessee is 2-4 right now on currently a 4-game losing streak. If you look at the turnover margin, Tennessee was -1 against Georgia, -3 against Kentucky, even against Alabama. So you're talking about an average of -5 on the turnover margin. Now here's what a lot of folks may not understand, is that turnovers are the great equalizers. It could actually kind of make a really a pretty good team just bad for that day. You look back to the Auburn versus South Carolina game. I really think that Auburn was well on its way to having a pretty decent performance against South Carolina. But when you have 3 turnovers, which puts the opposing team in plus territory, it's a formula for disaster. The crazy part about Auburn versus South Carolina, even though they were absolutely terrible when it came to turnover margin, actually still had a chance late to win the football game. Of course, did not do it. Another thing that's really hurting Tennessee that a lot of folks probably don't take into account is the fact that they stay on the field for an ungodly amount of time. And I'm going to tell you why. If you look at all the games that Tennessee has lost in the SEC this year, it's staggering. Opposing teams have had 93 first downs versus Tennessee's 66. And then when you glance through the time of possession, they just stay on the field way too long. And at a certain point, even a decent defense will start to kind of collapse at that point. Now, the last time Auburn and Tennessee met, it was back in 2018. Tennessee had not won an SEC game since 2016. And that was in the November portion of 2016. So it had been almost 2 seasons since Tennessee had won an SEC game. Now, here's Auburn's history. Now, if your quarterback is struggling, if you're on a losing streak, or if you're trying to make some history, Auburn could not come at a better time. We reflect back on the 2017 Peach Bowl when UCF was like pleading a case, storming their case to be among the top 4 teams in the country. Auburn could have silenced all that, but guess what? A no call, no show for Auburn. Auburn actually had a chance late to win that particular game, but UCF always has a statement because of defeating Auburn, the same team that defeated Georgia in November, defeated Alabama in late November, went to the SEC championship game, and then kind of laid an egg in the Peach Bowl against UCF. One thing Auburn absolutely has to dodge in this game is, for one, they can't let their guard down. This particular game is a primetime game for Auburn on ESPN, 7 o'clock p.m. It's not one of their typical 12 o'clock games. I think Auburn is in a much better position this time around versus the last time around, because Auburn doesn't want to be in a position to where, if you want to bail out a struggling quarterback, you want to bail out a team on a losing streak, you want to go ahead and clean these guys up. And what has Auburn done pretty successfully this year? They've been able to create opportunities off of turnovers. Definitely showed up big time in the LSU game, 48-11, converting on a pick, a scoop and score, converting on a interception by Nehemiah Pritchett early in the football game. That's 14 points right there. So if Auburn can continue their trend in creating turnovers, and also, I think if you look back to 2013, Auburn against LSU, although being defeated by the Bayou Bengals in that game, they found something on offense. And I think even though a lot of people would discount LSU, their defense, they'll say they're inexperienced, they say they're out of place. But when you can start to see as an offense for the Auburn Tigers, things in action, you really gain that confidence. And as a coaching staff, you start to look at, okay, this is what worked in this game. Why can't it work in the Tennessee game? Another thing that Tennessee has to be very careful of in this game, they're real bad about giving up big plays, 30 plus this year. And by big plays, we mean 15, 20 yards or more. Tennessee is not really good at not surrendering these big plays. And if that continues to be a trend, that's something that Auburn has actually become pretty good at along the stretch. And if Auburn can continue to produce, say, 200 yards rushing per game, keep Bo Nix in a very confident state with the RPOs and the back shoulder throws to Seth Williams, getting the ball to Xavion Capers, getting the ball to Seth Williams. I'm very interested, guys, to see if Kobe Hudson starts to play a different role even in the offense. He started to emerge, especially as a good blocking wide receiver. I just want to see if his role is going to expand in the passing game, because you've seen him out there. See if his role will expand. Tank Bigsby, obviously one of the up-and-coming freshmen of this particular football season. I want to see Tank Bigsby with about 20 to 25 yards per carry. Maybe Sean Shivers about 10. DJ Williams, not sure if he's still hurt. Mark Anthony Richard actually got a little playing time against LSU. So we're going to see if Auburn can take advantage of what has caused Tennessee to be kind of in disarray for these last 4 games. You talk about a 4-game losing streak, and it absolutely has not been close. Like I said before, teams are averaging upwards in 28 to 30 points per game. Tennessee only averaging 14.5 points per game. And as we found out, physicality is cool, but if you can't score points in college football now, as physical as you may be on defense, ask Georgia, ask pretty much any team that can't score points. Tennessee, Arkansas is actually one of those teams as well. Happened to them against Florida. If you can't score points, it's just changed. Defense doesn't necessarily win championships anymore. You have to score points. Alabama found that out back in the game 2014 against Auburn, when they were almost outscored against Auburn, won that game 55-44. It changed the trajectory of how they approach offense. The hard nose, beating teams 14-7, 38-21, that kind of that's over. You got to score points. All right, guys, this is the initial take of the Tennessee game. Auburn will welcome them into Jordan-Hare Stadium this Saturday, 6 o'clock. I think 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern. Like the video, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. I want to give I actually want some of the fans, if you could. I'm going to do a prediction show tomorrow. But if you could, give me your prediction of this game. Where do you think Auburn stands at this point? I think Auburn is trending in a pretty decent direction. But let me know your thoughts. A lot of folks, I even saw a subscriber say this could be an upset win for Tennessee. Let me know your thoughts. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger War Eagle. Subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you very soon.